I'm Stefan Baumann, and welcome once again to the Baumann Effect. Today we have a completely packed episode for you. We're going to be discussing brushstrokes and edges. We'll be touching on transitions and that big, mysterious conversation about temperature. We'll be discussing lights and shadows and movement. Also, what is the Baumann Effect? What is that? So you want to make sure first that you subscribe for my station, hit the little bell so you'll be reminded, because there's a lot of videos in this series and you'll be notified as soon as anything comes up. And sit back, relax, pull yourself up a cup of coffee and watch episode 6 of the Baumann Effect. How many of you fantasize about going to the national parks and painting outdoors? So, remember how I said to develop your style, you got to paint from life. You got to go outdoors and paint. Yeah, you could paint from your photographs, but the problem is the camera influences what you see. In fact, part of what we're going to be discussing, and I promise you we're going to get painting here shortly, but we kind of have to know what's going on in our head first. But part of the thing that we talked about earlier is that if you're not out painting outdoors, you're painting from photographs, you are influenced by that photograph. And the thing is, photographs have no brains. They just take a picture. Humans have brains. Some do. In that process of looking at something, and part of the Baumann Effect, which people want to know, what is the Baumann Effect? What's a lot of things. It's about central focal point transitions, and the big thing that people are always trying to ask questions from me is temperature, working with temperature. And the thing is, the great thing about working with temperature is that you can do stuff with temperature you can't do with values, which makes values insignificant. So when you watch a lot of these people on YouTube, they will go, oh yeah, well, values, they're the most important thing there is to painting. Master your values, you will be a master. That's not true. I know a lot of value painters, and students that I have that have worked with me, see Jeanette over here sitting and going, that students who work with me realize that, wow, when you master temperature, you can actually do stuff that values can't do. It's amazing. It's amazing. And so we're going to dwell into that. But it's putting together a composition and working with the golden mean and eye magnets and how people see and all this stuff. And so the thing is that if we go outdoors to paint, we're impressed. We see things a certain way. And we interpret it. Now, a lot of people will say, well, Steph, be reasonable. We know you work from photographs. Yeah, I mean, I do. In fact, today I'm going to work from a photograph. This is going to be a Mount Shasta scene.
Black and white.
It's black and white, and you don't even see the mountain. Now, that only came out that way because my printer was out of color. I was shooting, I was like, oh, come on, squeeze it out, squeeze it out. But boy, and I don't want to spend another $75 for ink. But anyway, so that's my photograph. So I have nothing but interpretation. There is nothing on here. There's no mountain or anything, and you can even see where my printer's telling me get in. So I can't do anything with this but interpret it. See how I have to interpret this? If it were photographic, I'd go, oh, this is going to be easy. I could promise you an awesome demo if I had a really good photograph, and I could promise you I could paint it just like that. But then that's not really being an interpretive artist. That's not where you start developing how you see. And when I give my workshops, Next one being in October. We have 2 workshops in May and in October every year. First thing I tell my students is, Mount Shasta is huge. It's one of the tallest mountains in America. Don't think you can squeeze it down on a little canvas and expect to do good. Use your tools. So I tell students, take a photograph of Mount Shasta, edit it on here. Put it to edit, decide what you want. Now a lot of students, they go, oh, notons. You must do preliminary sketches. Sketches are where it's at. In fact, if you do a good noton, you don't even need to be in the place. Well, you know, I tried that one time with a group of 18 students in Yosemite. I said, let's do some notons. And they go, what the hell is a noton? And I go, well, truthfully, it's a black and white character that repeats itself like yin and yang. That's what a noton is. But artists kind of adopted it, just like I make up words and stuff. And so it's like a black and white sketch. And so we went out there and we did notons, and by the time I ended up explaining it to everybody and everybody was doing their notons, the sun changed and a storm came in, and we didn't get any painting done. So my suggestion is bypass the notons. If you want to practice notons, there's a lot of teachers out there that will teach it to you, and you could go out there and waste your time doing notons. Or you could take a picture of it. I know I'm anti-picture, but you could take a picture of it. Go to editing, find out if you want a vertical or horizontal, get the mountain closer or further. Do you want just the trees or do you want the background? You could do everything in a second. Time is of the essence. And then freeze it. And then draw your picture off of this. For beginning students, it's the only way that you're going to take. If I took you to the Grand Canyon and you go, holy smokes, how do I put that on this little tiny canvas? Well, the camera will shrink it down and then you can see the relationships and you can get the drawing in. And once you get that drawing in, then put this away and paint it. It's a little trick, but it's using your materials. It's not being influenced by the photograph. But how we see is completely different, so we'll interpret it. This, you saw, I don't even have anything. So I even had to like ghost in Mount Shasta. Now I do have a picture of it in my phone because that's where I was downloading on there. But I'm going to try as hell to work from my mind and my imagination. So anyway, any questions before we start? This is a oil painting done on a 12 by 16. Now why do I use a 12 by 16? It's a standard size. I'm also a businessman. Now, when I have students show up for workshops, they show up and they have barely a cigar box that they can hold on to a stick and hopefully they can use it as an easel. And then they have 15 different canvases. The whole back of their car is filled with different sized canvases. Some of them really long and narrow, just in case that one opportunity comes where you're going to do a dead snake across the road, you want that canvas there. Okay. But the reality is you got to be practical, especially if you go to Yellowstone or Yosemite, you got to put this stuff into a box. And if it's all the same size, it makes it a lot easier. Now, the business side of me goes, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to paint on location. That's going to take a couple of hours. If I do a little 5 by 7, which some people go, I'm just going to do a little sketch, a little 5 by 7. That painting takes as long as doing a 12 by 16. At the end, that 12 by 16 canvas is going to be in a gallery somewhere, where the little 5 by 7 thing will be in a bathroom somewhere. Because people, and you won't be able to sell it for as much. So if you're consistently painting larger sizes, and 12 by 16 is pretty much the max that you can actually do on location in a 2-hour span. And a painting on location should take you about 2 hours. But you want to have consistent sizes, and you want to have a size that you get paid for, that you make money on. Then a little 8 by 10 or 5 by 7 that you're going to be wasting all afternoon on. One good thing and one bad thing about this kind of demonstration is you saw what I'm working from, and I at least know what's there. You guys are flying totally blind. And what's interesting, I haven't memorized, so yeah, it's somewhat cheating. But, so I'm taking liquid. Now, a little bit about mediums. Now, I'm not guaranteed that we're going to get done with this, but I'm going to start painting so we at least are going somewhere. But in the process, we want to try to cover as much information as we possibly can. So this is an oil painting that will be done on a ampersand board. And probably what I will do is I will give this demonstration to you, show you how I'm going to be painting some of the ideas and talk a lot through it, obviously. And then I probably will take it home and repaint on it. And that's where the Patreon site will actually benefit the artist watching what I actually do with it. Because when I'm talking to you and trying to share information, I'm not hung up on the painting so much. So anyway, so what I did was I'm using liquid.
Did you say liquid?
Liquid.
Or liquid?
Yeah. This is liquid. This is that part like B divided Vegemin.
Yeah. Liquid.
This is liquid. This stuff is awesome. Okay. It has a nice shine to it. It stinks, but it dries kind of fast. We'll have a whole topic on mediums and stuff. But for today, I thought liquid would be a good thing to paint with. So, and I know there are people that are just screaming, going, "No, not liquid."
So why did you put it on there? What does that accomplish?
So what I did was I took a little bit of liquid and just kind of, what they call this oiling in. So the liquid, what that does is it oils it in or kind of breaks that surface. So you were asking about the slicks of it. Actually, it will make it even slicker, but it kind of, what it does is kind of start breaking down the tooth a little bit. Okay, so we're actually breaking down the tooth.
Oh, what do you mean by that?
It's a smooth board.
It's a real smooth, so there's like a tension on it. And so sometimes when you break the tension of it and you kind of make it, it kind of takes off the finish, so to speak, so you can kind of, and so it doesn't quite squeak as much, but we'll find out whatever it does.
Well, once you paint on it, it will be slick because the liquid does that, doesn't it?
The liquid well, it will actually be somewhat slicker, but we'll just see. I'm always interested to see what happens because sometimes just the atmosphere. It's a very warm day. It's very mucky. That has a lot to do with your paints. I'm going to start painting in the sky. Okay, and you can see I'm not getting really a bad brush stroke right now. It's this actually is cobalt blue. Yes. And we're going to be talking about temperatures.
Right.
And so this is a really sweet color. Okay. And as I get off to the corners, I want to warm it up. So I go into something that's ultramarine. So let me get some ultramarine blue out. Ultramarine blue is really a beautiful color. It actually was made to be like lapis. And there are some art companies that actually have tried to put out some lapis paints. Michael Harding has, where they take pure lapis and make an ultramarine blue out of it. The problem is, and as we start talking about temperatures, is that you don't want to have that ultramarine blue as a base color. It's got to be warmer. It doesn't work. It doesn't have a lot of color to it, so it's not as sweet. Cobalt blue is a little bit sweeter. So I'm actually adding a little bit of cobalt blue and ultramarine now to this color, and I'm adding a little bit of asphaltum.
The brown.
Brown, asphaltum. Now, asphaltum, for those of you who have watched me demo and been in my classes, asphaltum has been a life changer for me. Originally, asphaltum used to be made out of tar that they used to coat mummies with. And I was watching a show on ancient Black Sea, and it was part of the people in that area that were farming tar out of the Black Sea, made a fortune selling that tar to the Egyptians. which they made, coverings for their mummies. And when the English in the 1880s, it was very fashionable to go to Egypt. They would bring these mummies up, and they would take the outsides of the tar, and they would grind it down and make paint, but it was very unstable. Yeah, they stopped making it because the Egyptian government said, quit taking our mummies away. When you look at Moran and Bierstadt and Sargent, that brown that you see is asphaltum. And a lot of artists use burnt umber. And the problem with burnt umber is that when it dries, it gets kind of chalky and flat. The asphaltum is beautiful, transparent, it's yellow. It's the same color as brown oxide. So anyway, so this is asphaltum in with the blue. And this is actually, you could see, it's not giving me a lot of strokes. It actually looks pretty good. But I'm also using a real soft rosemary brush. And it's going on really nice. So I'm going on much thicker. Now, your paint should be applied the consistency of soft butter. Like when you leave butter out overnight, that's a consistency of paint. When paint is manufactured and comes out of the tube, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the future on the Baumann effect and why it's important to know how paint is made, the thing that you want to get is that paint is almost perfect as it is. You could add a little bit of turpentine and it will kind of work. So you really shouldn't have medium to it. But adding a little bit of liquid to it just makes it a little bit more pliable, a little more sensual. And the thing is, what you want to do is get that you hold a brush this way in your hand. Okay? It's really an important key. You'll see me sometimes flip back and forth, but when you look at a photograph, you're trying to render edges. But as a painter and you're interpreting, you want to make sure that you put your paint on in a way that is interesting, because when we put in the center focal point, which we'll talk about in the future, you want this part of the painting to actually be interesting. So even though I'm covering canvas right now, it's really important to make sure that every brush stroke is beautiful.
Well, why are you going down?
Because I only have options to go down or up, back and forth or diagonal. But this isn't a bathroom where we paint like this. Okay? Every brush stroke. Now the key to doing brush strokes, and who was asking? Weren't you asking about brush strokes? I learned about brush strokes by watching a concert one day.
What?
A concert. Music concert. And it was a pianist. And it was in San Jose, and we were doing an art event with this musician. It was a huge concert hall. And this pianist sat down, and the room was packed, noisy. And he sat there. He waited for the room to get quiet. And then he waited some more. And you could start feeling the air in the room. And you could hear him waiting for the right space, the right moment in air to break the silence. And every note that he hit, he listened to see how it resonated in that room. You could see he was listening, and the next note changed slightly depending on how that note was played. And note by note by note, he composed or created this symphony for us to listen to. Every brushstroke you put down should be an independent brushstroke about who you are right now. We don't really think about that. We think, oh, I got to cover this canvas. But if you actually are looking at art as being an expression of you, and that's what art is, you want to make every brushstroke unique and different, and you need to watch how that brushstroke is applied. Now there's also some things, I don't know if you guys are seeing that, but there's some things about brushstrokes too, is that when you go vertically that reflects light differently than if you go horizontally. In fact, a horizontal light will actually capture more light than a vertical one.
Is that
Yes.
true? Is that true when you also have medium in there?
Yeah, well, I have medium in this. Yeah, the brush strokes are separate from the medium. The medium is just what paint slides on. The brush strokes are what, this is your interpretation. This is an extension of your fingers. This is your brain working to the end of the brush, to these fibers, and you watch that stroke.
Stefan, did you just say horizontal strokes reflect more?
Yeah, so when you go horizontal with a stroke, the brush hairs make little tiny edges, just like a Venetian blind. And so the light actually catches those edges, creating a more illuminated effect. When you go horizontal down with your brush stroke, the light actually comes down and just follows those little brush strokes and comes right down, and it doesn't have that reflective quality. So even just how you put brush strokes down, and a lot of people at this stage go, oh, it's like painting a bathroom, it's all one blue. But the thing is, as we start talking more about the Baumann effect, it's like literally we are looking for transitions, and transitions, oh my God, if temperatures are amazing, transitions are like really where it's at. There's so much that is not discussed out there in painting. But when you paint for 40 years and you teach for 40 years, you kind of get a lot of knowledge. So what we want to do is we want to kind of make every brush stroke interesting. And you want to hold the brush this way, because this is the same way that you would hold a steering wheel on a car or when you brush your teeth. Now think about what you do when you brush your teeth. You're not sitting there going, oh, I'm brushing my teeth, this is so cool. You're thinking about what you have to do. And oftentimes your brain is going, I gotta get this done because I need to get going on my day. And when you're driving here, I don't know if you guys noticed, but you guys didn't even notice how many stop signs you stopped at to get here. Because you're somewhere else. You go, oh, Stefan's giving a demo today, I get to see him. What is this Baumann effect and why am I coming to Medford for it? Anyway, and then you can break that up with smaller, but you don't want to sit there and pat like this. And a lot of artists say, just do a crosshatch now. It's like, no, it's like everything I do to this canvas from the very beginning is a statement of my mind at this moment. It's right now, and I'm putting that stroke in right now. People want their paintings to have a brushy quality, a confidence quality. That stuff starts from the very beginning. In fact, as we start studying the Baumann effect, as we go further forward into the Baumann effect, we start learning all this stuff, you will actually see that what you put on now is the end product of what we'll actually see. And a lot of the stuff that you see me putting in now is that dynamic brushstrokes that everybody wants to do. It's not something you do later, it's what you do now and you leave it. If you notice, I'm going from dark value to a lighter value to a darker value. We're actually going from a darker value to a lighter value. As we get down towards the horizon line, our light should get lighter and cooler. And as I get down towards here, I'm going to add that towards the horizon. Cadmium lemon. Now I'm going to start laying in the base for my mountain. I'm going to have the light coming from the left. And I'm going to just put in I added some phthalo red rose to this. Now, some artists, they actually use alizarin crimson. And the problem with alizarin crimson is that the color is dead. It doesn't show up very well. And so if you really want to create a nice quality of full spectrum color in your painting, you don't want to start off with alizarin crimson, because you add white to alizarin crimson and there's nowhere for it to go. It's just, no.
What's this color then?
Phthalo red rose. The phthalo red rose is the same as permanent red rose, is the same as magenta or quinacridine rose. They're all in the same family. And so adding that into our mountain is like the base coat now. Now, there's a thing you need to know about transitions, and that is, in the area of light, the highlight color has more to do with the color than the color itself. And the shadow of something has nothing to do with the color. The shadows have no color. They actually have a default, which we'll talk about in the future. The color that's in transition between highlights and shadows, that's the secret point. That's actually where you get the color of the object. In the transition, the color of the object, that's where you actually see the color that it is, and you also see the texture. So you have texture only in the transition, and you have the color of the object, or the local color, only in the transition. The highlight color has nothing to do with it, and the shadow doesn't. Oh yeah. There's so much that we're going to be talking about. But we can only just go little steps. This is like, part of this, every week this is...
It's better because you remember better.
Hopefully. But you'll actually do some homework assignments. And that will help too. Okay. It's like, Stefan, quit talking. So I'm going to add more cobalt. And I'm going to add a little bit of asphaltum because I want this to be kind of a warm blue color. And I'm going to try to remember what this mountain looks like. Now this is totally out of my head. But because I'm doing it out of my head, I can, because remember, I don't have any picture to look at. Because I'm doing it out of my head, I can basically put the light in where I want. You can see, like, if I had a photograph right now, I'd be really mulling over what this mountain looked like. I'd be doing a portrait of the mountain. But I guarantee, for those of you who've been in Mount Shasta, there's a freeway that goes through here. And I guarantee you, pretty much most people who drive through Mount Shasta, they're in awe of the mountain because it's really quite impressive and really beautiful. So as people drive through here, they couldn't render the photograph. They couldn't tell you what it looked like. So it really doesn't matter. In fact, if you look at a lot of old beer shop paintings and they call it Mount Hood, I know it's not Mount Hood because I know it's Mount Rainier, but it doesn't matter. But anyway, I digress. So anyway, so here's the shadow, here's the highlights. And here I'm taking the highlights. That's actually the local color. It's not even the color of the mountain. I mean, this is the color of the mountain. It's not even the highlights yet. And I'm working totally out of my head. Now, the main thing about the human brain is kind of like they have a side of the brain that they call that is your left brain that has all your knowledge. And it doesn't know what the right brain knows. And so if you see a car accident and you're not paying attention to what happened and the police department puts you under hypnosis, you can recall the license plate. And that's your right brain. Your right brain has all this knowledge. And so as artists, we have to develop how to turn off the left brain. In fact, our left brain is sitting there telling us what we think we see. Now, when we go to Mrs. Gugolinski, and as we start talking further into this experiment that we're doing here, you're looking at one thing and you'll swear you're telling me something else. And my job is to try to turn your left brain off and let your right brain be true. So you're saying, no, it's this. And your left brain is going, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. It's like this. And it's amazing with my students. I sit there and I go, why are you painting it that color? And they go, well, it should be that color. I know, but it's not the color that we're actually seeing, is it? So anyway. So, and as this comes closer, as things comes closer to you, they get darker in value, don't they? And for those artists out there that go, oh, I know, Stefan. I know what these temperatures are. It's not a big deal. As things come closer, they get warmer. Ha! In the next few weeks, we will dispel the belief of what we think we know. So anyway, so I'm going to put in a darker base color here. This is the Foothill Mountains. It's actually kind of nice. Wow. This, I'm going to add a little bit more darker color. Just so I have a transition going down. Judging by my photograph here, what I can actually see of it. But you can see it's a little more illuminated down there. So I'm going to bring a little bit more light in. Okay, so I'm going to add lemon yellow to my asphaltum and cobalt blue. Add just a tad of white. Now white is a value maker. So you only use white when you're pushing something back. It's not a color. Now see, if I were working from a photograph, I'd be going, oh, I got to pay attention to all those little trees. I got to pay attention to... But see, that's the problem with working from a photograph. If you actually interpret stuff, you can kind of see it in a different way. So, as we get closer to the light, obviously I'm going to lighten up the effects here. And I'm going to, just... Can you see if I'm constantly making these little effects like this? And when you see those really loose painters, that's what you see. You see actually paint being put onto the canvas at the very start. It's not something you put in later. Jeanette, we worked on trying to loosen up your paintings, right? And we've determined that loosening up is at the beginning. And then you get your center focal point going. But this here, now that might be a little bit saturated. I don't know, because I still have a lot of white canvas. And if you notice on this particular canvas, I didn't start with my usual dark brown base. You know, sometimes you see me working with the dark brown base. I don't always do that. But right now you can kind of see that I'm putting in a lot of little brush strokes, a lot of saturated color. Now, if you want your painting to not look, and this is another conversation I had this morning. I tell you, coaching rocks, because there's so many conversations we have and so many things that I discussed with you already. That was just this morning. You can imagine. People go, well, how can you get up that early? And I go, well, I told you originally it's because I get to be with you. But the thing is, I get to engage on all these insights. You know, over and over. 7 days a week, practically. All right. Another thing that's on my list of things to do as we go through are angles, and really what light falls on and what doesn't. But for right today, we're just going to put in this juicy, wonderful effect of yellow. Just, all of that in there. That's just the light hitting that luscious meadow. And for those of you who have driven by Mount Shasta, the little town is just like over here. And this view that I'm actually painting is not from my living room, but from where the Sesson Hotel used to belong to.
It's not the freeway, really.
Well, but up on this knoll is where the Sesson Hotel was, which was a point of destination for people who traveled to Mount Shasta. You would take the train up to the Sesson Hotel, and that was the end of the railroad at that time. And the Sesson was like the Awani. It was an incredible, wonderful hotel. And Bierstadt stayed there, Thomas Hill stayed there, and even John Muir stayed there. And there's a story of John Muir that he goes up there, because he actually was thinking about making Mount Shasta into a national park. And he said, I'm going to go take a walk. And he took off. And 5 days later, he came back. And they said, where were you? And he said, I walked around the mountain.
Wow.
Yeah.
5 days later.
5 days later, yeah. So anyway, this is where the hotel was, but since then the hotel burned down, and right now where we're standing here are some very bitchy people that live here. And so when you're painting, the whole place is filled with don't stop, no parking, all this stuff. So we have to literally stand on the road like this, making sure cars don't drive behind us. And we have to stand out there because if we step just on their property, oh my God. They come out on, like, you're on our property. And they say, next time you come, you got to sign a contract. Okay, so I'm going to lay in the base of these oaks. And these oaks are really what the showstoppers are. I mean, this is what really makes this painting gorgeous. And this is why I pulled over there and, you know, painted in the first place. This is actually a painting I've painted before for the gallery. And so right now what I'm doing is, you know, instead of copying the photograph, what I do, because it's all interpretation, because I don't have anything to really work from, and I'll even turn these the other direction, so I'm not even, but what I'm looking at is like, okay, I'm putting a mass in here. And I'm not trying to paint the trees that are there, although I like the trees that are there, but I'm going to put them in a way that's beneficial for my painting, because at the end of today, I want to have a painting that I could sell. You know, and that's the idea when you paint outdoors. You want to go out there and nail something. So you want to paint something. And so what I'm looking at here, I'm thinking, you know, where do I want to put my dark? You know, where would be a good compositionally? You know, we break this into thirds, and we'll talk about that, putting together compositions in the future. You're going to learn so much in this. It's just unbelievable. But anyway,
I said, whoopee.
I know. You'll want to pay me. Anyway,
You have to by then, right?
I know you will have to by then. It depends. Okay, so I'm taking asphaltum and asphaltum and cobalt blue. Okay, which actually can see a little bit of a greenish color to it. It's really kind of pretty. And I'm paying attention to this mass. And what's really important that I create a mass in here that's interesting. And sometimes I look at artists' work and they'll put a tree in, and I'll go, why did you paint a ladder? They go, there's no ladder in there. I say, look at that tree. And they go, what do you mean? And they'll have a trunk, and then they'll have, you know, the branches going straight across and straight across and straight across. I said, that's not how a tree looks like. And even if it did, change it. Change it. Do something with it that's a little bit more interesting. You know, so I love, you know, the little oak trees. Right now I'm thinking about movement, which is another thing that we talk about, eye magnets and how your eye goes through it. But right now, real quick, I'm looking at the angle. This is why working from photographs sucks, because I would be interested in painting that tree that's on the photograph, not painting what I think is beneficial for the painting. And you know, I kind of think, okay, well, I want this little oak to live here in a happy little oak tree. This is where it wants to live. Nice little destination. It's a little Rob Ross. Yes?
If you wanted to change something now, say I don't like the tree that's in the middle, how do you get it off at this stage? Would you wipe it off?
You could wipe it off. You could use a palette knife, wipe it off. But I don't make those mistakes because I watch before I start. I practice. You know why I don't make those mistakes though? Because I've made 1,000 of them. My garage is filled with trees in the wrong place. But let's just say you go, oh, I wanted a little bit more bend in that tree, right? You could take your finger and kind of, you can kind of actually push the paint around to be something else, you know, so it slides around. Okay, so anyway, and you can see how luscious this no. So I'm looking at, and now you see you interrupted me because I want that tree to go this way because that angle of the thing, the eye magnets, is crucial. That angle of that tree is crucial. I don't know what's on the photograph anymore, but the thing is I know the photograph's a little bit different. Same thing in here. I'm going to put a couple more trunks in here, okay? Now you go, Stefan, how can you put those trees in and not have, you know, like anything underneath it? And I go, you'll learn that in the Baumann Effect too. The right way to do trees. The best way to do trees is not to paint them in like a coloring book. But they actually put them in and then put the bird holes in on top of it. Now, what are bird holes? It's the air holes. It's where birds fly through. Because if you don't put in bird holes, you've got to paint a bunch of dead birds down below. Because they can't fly through. So anyway, here we are. We're going to stick a few bird holes in. And the big bird holes will be like these things in here. So we'll actually paint it in reverse. And if you really pay attention, and this will change the way you look at paintings in the museum, you know, from the Hudson River School artists and stuff, is that the way you want to paint trees is not to leave a spot in like I did here. You want to paint them like solid shapes, like it did, like that. And then you go in and you paint the bird holes, you carve them in backwards like this. And there's a couple reasons why you do that. If the paint below is wet and you go in and you start putting a dark line across it, then it gets kind of chalky. You can't get that dark line. So when I lay the dark line in originally, that dark is as dark as it's going to get. And as I start putting in the bird holes, I can actually put these bird holes in, and they're going to pick up some of the color that's underneath. Now, a lot of artists, a lot of beginning artists, they go, well, I want to wait till it dries, and then I'm going to put my tree in on top of it. Or I will leave a shape and then put my tree in that shape. And I'll have all the bird holes there as I go along. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up this mountain color, and I'm going to put in a bird hole. Now, that bird hole should be at least a value or half a value darker than the color that's behind here. It should be darker than this.
Because it has a lot of shading in it.
Because it's shaded, yes. So the bird holes are a half a value darker. And so when you do this, usually if you take this color here, whatever that color is here, and you put it in on top of this, guess what's going to happen? It actually will sit on top of that wet paint, and it will naturally darken itself. It will naturally darken itself as you're putting those bird holes in. And then you have to pay attention to where the trunks would be to make sure you don't put a bird hole over a trunk. And then in this opening, what you want to do is you want to make it look like there are little branches in between. So I'm going to put in another bird hole in here, and there's going to be a little indication of a branch. Now I know you guys are really far back there, so you can't really see this. But let me do a little bit bigger one. You see how the branches all start to pop through the tree? Yeah. That's the proper way of actually doing that. So the end result here very quickly is I'm just going to put in shadow in the foreground, because really this whole painting is about the light coming in behind, lightening up that meadow. And so all of this stuff will be...
The light comes from the top left, right?
Top left, yeah. So that will be all this. And, we'll put some things in, and we could put a little pathway in. On the Patreon site, I'm going to try to go home and try to work on this, and I'll get that posted as soon as I figure out how to get that all together. But a lot of fancy brush strokes. You could see all those interesting little brush strokes. They all just kind of become part of the painting, don't they? Then that's what they really should be. So anyway, so here we do this and that. But I want to give you guys your homework assignment.
Yes.
You think you're done? Okay. So as you can see, this is just a real quick, with all of my talking and stuff, we actually got something done at the top. If you wish to see the conclusion of this painting, go to my Patreon station at www.patreon.com and search under my name. There I will share more demos of painting on location and interesting information about hidden secrets that artists use to get the best out of their work. Some information that you can only get on the Patreon site. So give that a try. Meanwhile, go to my website and search for the Baumann Effect by going to www.stefanbaumann.com. There you can get more information on what we are doing, more information about my Patreon site, and get some information about my plein air workshops. There you can also get some background and information on my PBS television show, The Grand View, America's National Parks Through the Eyes of an Artist. While you're at the website, feel free to register for my free book, Everything I Know About Painting. Like us on Facebook and be notified of upcoming episodes that are soon to be released, plus weekly giveaways, special events for students, and more information about the Baumann Effect and behind the scene. If you wish to watch the Baumann Effect in person, feel free to contact me at 415-606-9074. The Baumann demonstration is conducted in Medford, Oregon, and it's always conducted on Thursday at 1 o'clock. If you'd like to be invited, please just give me a call. If you have any questions that you wish to have answered for the Baumann Effect, please just submit them below in the comment section, and I will try to answer them in upcoming episodes. If you'd like to have some coaching, feel free to give me a call at 415-606-9074. Give it a try, or if you're kind of timid about giving me a call, just go ahead and text me that information. And always remember, till next time, don't go into your studio unless you are planning to change the world. And always paint with passion. I'm Stefan Baumann. Have a grand day.